Hello and welcome. I'm EJ Hunyadi, and let's get right to it. Let's talk about the 10th Mountain Division's Command Sergeant Major's video from earlier today. Command Sergeant Major Terenas, I think that's how it's pronounced, of the 10th Mountain Division, he put out a video today on Facebook, and he had talked about the new cell phone policy for the 10th Mountain Division.
You spoke, we heard it, CG heard you, and we're putting stuff into motion. So what this is about one, giving time back to the soldiers. There should be no reason that you are getting anything before 0500 and you're getting anything after 1800. It's your time, it's our time. It's time to spend with families, it's time to spend with ourselves for the ones that are single. It doesn't matter. And that includes your weekends, that includes your dances, that includes when you are on leave. And that's what we started putting this thing together. And the same thing during the duty day. If we're training, if we're in meetings, that sort of stuff, we're going to minimize the usage of cell phones altogether. Hey, look, it's not punitive. So a lot of the other questions and things that I'm hearing is like how we're going to enforce this. We're going to enforce this because you know what? One, first and foremost, it makes sense. It makes sense. Two, the commanders across the entire division, along with the CG, they're going to do everything we can to minimize this. And we're going to enforce it. And we're going to ask our junior and senior leaders to enforce it. And I got a feeling it's going to make our lives a whole lot better. Cool? So again, not punitive, not a cell phone ban. It's just about giving time back. And at the end of the day, what this will do is it will make us plan better. It will make us plan better because it will make life predictable. We will plan, let you go, and then in the morning, if something changes, we'll adapt in. Make sense? Anyway, 10th Mountain, I love you all. Don't be average as always, and climb to glory.
What this policy does not do is it does not say that soldiers can't use the phone. That's one of the most basic things. He hammers that point home in the video more than a few times. It's not a ban on cell phone use. What it does do is it puts a strict limitation on what leaders can message their soldiers after hours. And after hours means after 1800 and before 0500 in the morning. As many of you who are in the Army know, there is a very big problem of over-messaging after hours, holding soldiers accountable for missing messages after hours that were not necessarily emergency messages. Now, some leaders may think these are emergencies, but a lack of proper planning is not an emergency. A lack of making sure that word gets out before close of business is not an emergency. That's one of the main points that I want to make here, because it seems like on the TikTok that I made about this, a lot of people were actually against this. Now, to be fair, the majority of the people were saying things like, it's about time, I agree, this is great news, and so forth. But there was, to me, a concerning number of people who didn't understand and were saying things that were, to me, quite questionable. So I'm going to take these comments kind of piece by piece. So Owen Vinup says, I'm glad my leadership is not like this. We have 4 different chat channels, one for each of the 3 shifts, then all personnel. This helps people not only on duty not get unneeded notifications about stuff that isn't applicable to their shift. If there's something applicable to everyone, it will be in the personnel chat. And I get it. That makes sense, okay? Using personnel chat during duty hours, totally okay. What he's talking about is the unnecessary messaging in the evenings or early mornings. He also said more than a few times that emergencies obviously will continue to be messaged, and anything that's relating to safety or mission preparedness, something that's super important, those are still fine to go out. But telling people there's a change in PT time tomorrow morning, my view on this is, if you didn't plan properly, if you didn't get the word out, you shouldn't be bothering your soldiers after hours just to get them to get to PT 30 minutes early or something like that. You need to take the L, right? Plan better next time and pivot in the morning. That's good leadership. Vinny the Guido says, it's freaking 2022. This is how these soldiers communicate nowadays. Just another reason to bend to society. Poor leadership, LOL. So basically, he was making fun of the fact that I said it's poor leadership to rely on cell phone communications. And I understand what he's getting at, right? In the young generation, our young soldiers are used to using cell phones for everything. But here's the thing, right? We're not always in garrison. We're not always in peacetime. You have to train like you fight. In a large-scale combat operation, right? LSCO, big war. Think what's going on in Ukraine and between Ukraine and Russia right now. How is the Ukraine finding all those generals and taking them out? Because they're using their cell phones, right? Right now, neither side is cutting off cell phone communications because both sides use cell phone communications, but it's much to their detriment. The United States will not be using cell phones if we get into large-scale combat operations. I guarantee it. Now, for people in the National Guard and the reserves, yes, on those weekends that we drill and stuff, or when we're at AT, we rely pretty heavily on cell phones. We really should not be, and I have a feeling that in the future we won't be, and it's going to be a much bigger issue. This whole thing about, the cell phones making communications easier, it does, and we should use the technology we have, but we need to use it appropriately and properly and not oversaturate our soldiers during their off time. Another comment I've seen, and I'm going to paraphrase it because I saw it probably 50 times today already, was people saying something to the effect of, well, back in my day, we were soldiers 24/7. We didn't have working hours. Yeah, you did. All right. I was a Marine from 1986 until 1997. And even back then, even before the advent of the smartphone, back when I think in my last 2 years was when cell phones started becoming prevalent, we still respected after hours. If you were off work, unless there was something really important, you were off work. Now, did they call you in sometimes? Sure, that's the military. You're always on call. And of course, it's a different story if you're on alert status, or if you're on a 24-hour standby or a 6-hour standby or anything like that. When I was the chief traffic accident investigator, I was actually on a pager where I had to answer it within 5 minutes of that pager going off, and I had to be out on the scene of an accident within 15 minutes of that pager going off, so I couldn't even leave base. Now, those things, that's part of the job. I get it. But if you are in garrison and you're not in the field, you're back in the base, you're back on post, and you go home after a long day at work, there should be no reason for leadership to be bothering you about stuff that's going to be going on the next day that they should have passed on to you during working hours. This is something that's been going on in the military for a long time, and I know the 10th Mountain Division Command Sergeant Major is not going to fix the entire military overnight. He's not going to fix this problem right away. But it has to start somewhere, and I'm really happy to see that at least one Command Sergeant Major and one division in the Army is finally saying, you know what, enough is enough. We need to get back to basics. We need to make sure that we're briefing our people properly during business hours. We need to leave them alone when they're at home. And that goes for the soldiers in the barracks too. There's no reason to keep putting out information after hours. Yeah, here you go, Nikki Youngblood. I can get on board with this, but aren't we working on call 24/7 while we're in? Yes, you're on call 24/7 in the military, of course, right? Because the nation's defense relies on us, and we don't get to pick the time of day or anything when it comes to us being needed. But even if you're in motor transport, even if you're an aviation mechanic, if you're S1, if you're a pay clerk, if you're field artillery, if you're infantry, when you're in garrison, you have an expectation to be off at a certain time of the day, and a lot of those soldiers have families, and they should be able to go home and spend some time with them. So Bueno Lawrence asks, how would you communicate with soldiers or sailors in shift work, getting on comms with them while they're off? Again, with shift work, you have to determine what is considered the standard work day, and then go back 2 hours before showtime, and then go forward, I don't know, something like 2 or 3 hours after they're done with their shift. So if they get off shift at 6 in the morning, anything after maybe 8 or 9 is off limits. It keeps it fair for all workers. But there's absolutely going to be acceptable use of messaging. There's acceptable times for messaging. But again, what the Command Sergeant Major is addressing here, really what it comes down to is is a lack of planning. And what I think he's not saying, which based on all of the training I've been doing for the past 8 months on active duty, is that we're not training for COIN anymore. We're training for LSCO. And in LSCO, we're not going to have cell phones, and we're not going to be able to rely on them as backup means of communications. Our primary means of communications are going to be what we use, our secure encrypted communications. Backup is going to be analog, and analog is literally sending runners. If the next war that we're in is as big and as nasty as some people think it is, then there's a good chance that most, if not all, electronic devices like this are going to be rendered useless. And if that's the case, our reliance on those devices right now will hinder us because we're going to have hiccups getting used to working without them. So in today's training environment, in today's operational environment, we need to get used to operating without them. That's the bottom line. And I think that's what's unsaid here. Walls7853 says, I disagree. It shouldn't be overused, but why not use the tools around us to make sure we can adapt to any scenario? There are definitely reasons to use them outside of poor planning. Again, it goes back to what I was saying. We can't rely on them when we're in the fight, so we should not be using them in training. Now, everybody has one, and it is an effective tool, right? That's why we've come to rely on it so heavily. And again, nobody's saying we can't use them. What they're saying is don't overuse them, especially after hours. This is protecting our private time because everybody does deserve that. I don't care if you're a Marine, soldier, sailor, airman, space cadet, or I'm sorry, whatever they call Space Force, I don't know, Starship Troopers. I don't know what they are. But everybody deserves their private time, their personal time, their off time, even in the military. And to those who think that we don't deserve it or that we shouldn't have that because back in my day, we worked 24/7. Again, no, you did not. I was there back in the day, and you did not work 24/7. We also had off time. We also had the ability to be with our families and to enjoy time off with our friends. Now, this is something I didn't know. According to Joe B204, he says Fort Hood just took on almost the same policy. It's nice. I'll bet it's nice. And again, it's how it should be. So some people have commented, and again, I'm paraphrasing because there's probably about 10 or 15 comments that all said the same thing, just in different words. And they said things like, well, you better get ready because in the civilian world, there are no limits. Yeah, there are, okay, because I am in the National Guard. So while I just came off active duty for the past 8 months, I do work in the corporate world. Pretty big company, 38,000 people. And in that company, we do not message after hours unless it's in a dire emergency. Now, Marmatic1 says, I agree and disagree. Sometimes we need to get in touch when issues arise or things change out of control. But we also need to plan ahead. This is the thing. What he said is exactly what the Sergeant Major said. That we need to plan ahead to get rid of the superfluous after-hours messaging. However, things change. Emergencies happen. And for those, completely acceptable. Okay, so to recap all of this, it's okay to have a cell phone in the 10th Mountain Division. It's okay to use your cell phone. It's okay to be messaging. It's okay for the command team to be messaging. It's okay for NCOs to be messaging. What's not okay is for them to be messaging non-emergencies and non-critical information after hours. It's not about taking away tools from leaders. It's not. It's about giving protected time back to the soldiers. And like I said, the subtext is it's in making sure that we stop relying so heavily on cell phones because in the future, we likely won't be able to. So I hope you enjoyed. Please comment. I'd love to see what your thoughts are on this. And like everybody on YouTube says, please subscribe and like and comment and all that good stuff because it really helps me get the word out. It really opens up better communication. I love to hear what folks think. And as you've seen on TikTok, I try to reply to as many of the comments as I can. Obviously, when there's literally hundreds or thousands of them, it gets a little tough because as I'm answering, another big bunch comes in, and so I may miss some. But YouTube has a really good system of notifying for comments that I've missed, and so I kind of like that here. So thanks again. Take care. Have a great day.